Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Now it's Tuesday today and I thought we might have a look at this puzzle, which is a very old puzzle that featured on Bastien Vial-Jaime's blog about 6 years ago. And the reason I thought it looked interesting is it's a sort of partial killer Sudoku. So you can see that not every cell in this grid is in a cage. There are some cages dotted around, and the reason this attracts me is that I suspect this therefore has a very narrow solving path. We're going to have to discover exactly how Bastien has set this puzzle up in order to crack it. So I'm looking forward to trying it in a moment. A couple of things to mention. If you're a patron of the channel on Patreon, then our video on how to solve this month's reward puzzle is going to go live in the next day or so. So we've made it, it's ready to go. Talking through Christoph Seeliger's sandwich Sudoku with thermometers hybrid puzzle. Fantastic puzzle, very difficult puzzle. I know several of you have cracked it, but the video on how to do it will be going live imminently. So do look out for it if you've struggled with the puzzle. Now if you want to try this puzzle, just click on the link under the video and that should take you to a screen that looks very like this one, where you can have a go. Now, a reminder, if you're new to the channel and you aren't that familiar with Killer Sudoku, these cages dotted around, what this means is that we have to make sure the sum of the cells in this 28 cage add to 28. So we're going to have to put numbers into the yellow squares that sum to 28, and that's the only restriction really. It's probably not, no, it's not relevant for this puzzle, but the only other restriction you need to know on Killer Sudoku is if a cage crosses a boundary like this, then it can't have a repeated digit. So I mean, obviously it can't have a repeated digit if the cage is entirely within a 3x3 block, but in general, if the cage does cross a boundary, it still can't have a repeated digit. So important to remember that for most Killer Sudokus. And with that, I'm going to have a go at this. So how do you start? 30 cage down here in 4 cells. Well, that can only be 6, 7, 8 and 9. Take the 4 biggest numbers, add them up, you get 30. So, oh, and in fact, look, we can do, there's a couple of things to note here. 30 plus 12 is 42. Well, I know the whole of this block will add up to 45 because the numbers from 1 to 9 add to 45. So if these 7 cells here sum to 42, these 2 cells must sum up to 3, and the only way of doing that obviously is with a 1 and a 2. So we'll get quite a lot done in this bottom right hand corner. In fact, we've got symmetry going on. Look, over here we've got a 19 cage and a 23 cage. Well, that also sums to 42. So these 2 must sum up to 3. They are therefore 1 and 2. So now we've got 1, 2 pairs, look, in rows 7 and rows 9. So the 1 and the 2 in this 3x3 block here must be in those squares. Yes, okay, wow, right, there's more we can do here though. Let's have a look at this 3x3 block. You can see again we've got 2 cages, this time summing to 40. But if we look over on this side, we've got another 2 cages also summing to 40. So I know that these 2 squares in this 3x3 block must sum up to 5, and therefore they're either going to be 4 and 1 or 2 and 3. And I know exactly the same thing is true there. Now, this is interesting because now I've got the numbers 1, 2 and 3 and 4 occurring in 4 different cells in this row. So it's not possible for any other square in row 5 to be a 1, 2, 3 or 4. So what can this square be? Now this is part of an 8 cage, and if it can't be a 1, 2, 3 or a 4, it'll have to be a 5. And these 2 squares therefore must be a 1 and a 2. And look how beautiful this is now. This 1, 2 pair interacts with all of these 1, 2s on this box. Where can the numbers 1 and 2 now go? Well, they can't go in any of those squares. So 1 and 2 must be in these 2 positions, and I'm sure you're all seeing what I'm seeing here. There's no way we can put a 1 in this square, otherwise that would make that square a 10. So that's got to be a 2, that's a 1, that's a 6, and that is a 9. And the 6, 9 here immediately impact on our 30 cage. Look, we're going to be able to... Yeah, this is lovely. 6, 9 now, 6, 9. So where can the number 6, 9 go in this 3x3 block? Well, they're going to have to go in these two squares. It's the only available squares. And 6 and 9 add to 15. This is a 19 cage. So that must be a 4. Oh, actually, look, we've got a 5 here as well. So there must be a 5 in one of those two positions. And now this 5, whichever one of these is a 5, neither of these can be a 5. So the 5 must be here in the 12 cage. It's just, this is so beautiful the way this is designed. Now look, this feeds back. The 3 and the 4 now feed back on this box. Where can the 3 and the 4 go? Well, only in those two squares. And this 4 tells us which way around that's got to be. So these squares up here must be 5, 7 and 8. We don't yet know the order. That one can't be 5. These two squares must be 3 and 5 to complete this row. So these two must also be 7 and 8. This 4 rules out a 4 from that square. So if a 4 is ruled out from this square can't be a 1 because we know these two sum to 5. Oh, here's something. Yes. Look at this row. So this row, we also, obviously, a whole row in a Sudoku will contain the numbers from 1 to 9, so that's going to add up to 45. But look, we've got an 18 cage and a 17 cage in this row. So these 3 squares have to sum up to 10. Now that's interesting, because this is a 1, 2, 5 triple coming down, this 10 sum is very restricted. I can't ever make this square a 2. If I make this square a 2, watch what happens. Because this square is then forced to be a 1, I've got to make these two squares add up to 8, because I know the 3 squares add up to 10, so once I've got 2 here, these two must add up to 8, but now it's impossible. I can't do 1 and 7, I can't do 2 and 6, and I can't do 3 and 5. So this simply is not a 2. This must be a 1, this must be a 2, these two squares must sum up to 9, and you can see the only available option now, 1 8's ruled out, 2 7's ruled out, 4 5's ruled out, so this must be 3 and 6. And there's a 6 there, so that's 6 and 3 in this order. We've got 1s and 3s now, so there must... yes, there must be 1s and 3s in these 3 positions, but look, we can't put a 1 or a 3 in a 28 cage. A 28 cage in 4 cells must be, well, it's only 2 ways you can do it. It must be 4, 7, 8 and 9, or 5, 6, 8 and 9. Neither of those options contains a 1 or a 3. So the 1s and the 3s are there in those 2 squares. Can't have a 2 in the 28 cage either, so there must be a 2 in one of those 2 squares. An 8 cage in 3 cells must always contain a 1, so let's put that in and see if that tells us anything. What am I meant to do now? Yes. Now, let's have a look at column 1. We've got this square, and this square that can only contain the numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4. But these 2 squares also are restricted. They are in an 8 cage. Now, an 8 cage can never contain a digit higher than a 5. So we can label these two squares with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And you can see that gives us a quintuple in column 1. These 5 highlighted cells must be the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 in some order. Now we've already got one of them locked as a 4, so there's no 4 up there. Oh, this is gorgeous now. Now look, now which one of these 5 cells can contain a 5? Well, only one of these two squares. Now if I know there is a 5 in an 8 cage, this 8 cage must be the numbers 1, 2 and 5. That's the only way of making 8 in 3 cells if you know there's a 5 in the sum. And now look, where can a 3 go? Well, this is the only candidate for a 3, and that means this is a 2. Oh, and now we're really cooking with gas because, oh, whoops. If we know this is a 2 and a 3, because we know they add to 5, we knew this was a 3, so this must be a 2. Then these two must be 1 and 4. This can't be a 5 because the 5 must be in one of these two squares. This 2 sees this square, that must be a 1. That's that 2 and a 1 in that order. This 1 sees the 1 and the 4. This 4 sees the 4 and the 3. 2, 5. Threes. Sorry, let me just think of this. This can either be 3, 7 or 4, 6. We don't yet know which is which, I don't think. Oh, hang on, look, we can do some logic on this. Yes. Now, we've got a 10 cage and a 9 cage, so these 5 squares add up to 19. So is it possible that there is no 1 in these yellow squares? If there's no 1, the minimum I could make these 5 squares would be 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now that adds up to 20. So there must be a 1 in those 5 squares. Now we've got 1s here, so there must be a 1 in one of those two positions. And now look, we know the 1 in this 3x3 block is locked into row 1 and row 2. And we know that the 1 in this 3x3 block is locked into row 1 or row 2. So there's no way we can have another 1. This cannot be a 1. If this is a 1, the implication would be that this is a 1 and this is a 1. Now that's not possible. So this must be a 3. This must be the 1. Oh, hang on a minute now. Look, we've got 3s here and here. Now this is very important actually, because if this is a 1 in this block, then how would we make 9 in 3 cells? Now the only way of making 9 in 3 cells, if you can't use a 1, is with the numbers 2, 3 and 4. 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 9, but we know that's impossible because there cannot be a 3 in this 9 cage. So this must be the 1. Therefore, that's a 1. Goodness me, I think we're going to be... This 2 means that's a 2. This must... now this can't be 3, 5, look. So this must be 2 and 6. It's the only other way of making the 9 cage work. And now we really are... Yeah, now we really are motoring, because... How do we do this 10 cage now? Can't be 1, 9, can't be 2, 8, can't be 4, 6. So this must be 3, 7. Therefore, this 10 cage must be 4, 6. And these 3 cells must be, what's that going to be, 5, 8 and 9? So if these are 5, 8 and 9, this square must be a 6 in order to make our 28 total work. So these 2 squares therefore are 4 and 7. Now we can resolve that because there's a 4 at the bottom. So that's a 4 and that's a 7. That means this is an 8. This must be a 9. It's the only digit that can go in the square. Wow. So these two squares now, to complete this row, must be 8 and 9. Now, what can we do next that will be helpful? I'm sure you're all seeing things that... Oh, hang on, look. This 4 is nice because there can only be a 4 in that square. So that means there's a 4 in this 18 cage in one of those two squares. Now, if there's a 4 in this 18 cage, we need the other two cells to add up to 14 without using 8 and 6. So this must be 4, 5 and 9. And there's a 5 there. So actually there must be this must be a 4, 5 pair, and this must be a 9. That resolves the 9 and the 6 at the bottom. It's stunningly clever, this. It's stunningly clever. 7, 8 pair to complete column 1. These squares must be 2, 7 and 8. The 2 can only go there. So these two squares are now 7 and 8. What's next? 8, 7, 8. I feel like there's a lot I'm missing here. Let's have a look. This square... Well, we need 7, 8 and 9 to complete this column. We've already got a 7 in here, so this must be an 8 or a 9. That forms a pair with that 8, 9. So these two squares must be 4 and 5, and there's a 4 there. So 4, 5. Five into one of those squares. Ah, and there's a 5 down there, so that resolves that. These squares must be 3, 6, 9 in some order, therefore that's an... Ah, this one does have to be a 9. Yeah, I think that's right. So that's an 8, that's a 7, that's an 8. This is a 3, this is a 6, this is a 3, this is a 7, this is a 9, this is an 8, this is an 8, this is a 7. And all of a sudden the puzzle is starting to yield, I think. 9, 6, 7, 8 down there. Still need 7, 8 and 9 into these squares. You can see there's an 8, 9 pair there, so that must be 7. These two squares must be 8 and 9. That must be in this order. That makes this one a 7. Yeah, and I think now we have cracked it. What a beautiful puzzle. Beautiful puzzle. As always from Bastien, actually. He's a stunning compiler. Now, what do we need here? We need 3 and 9, so that must be 9 and 3. That resolves the 3 and the 5, which resolves the 5 and the 4, 4 and the 6, and hopefully the 1. Check. Yes. And that's how to do the puzzle. What a great puzzle. Do let me know in the comments whether you enjoyed that, whether you found the same path that I did. That felt like an efficient solve to me. I got a bit bogged down towards the end, but I think the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 triple, or quintuple I should say, in column 1 was pretty key. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. We really appreciate it. I'm back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.